My ex turned every ordinary interaction in my life into a threat. A smile from a stranger could get someone's car damaged. A friendly conversation could get a man followed home. And saying thank you to someone could be enough to make my ex show up at my door. My name is Delaney. I'm 28 years old. 2.5 years ago, I finally walked away from Colton after 5 years of the worst relationship of my life. I thought leaving him meant I was free. I was wrong. The first threat came the same night I moved into my new apartment. I had spent the afternoon carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs, trying to convince myself that the unfamiliar walls meant something. A beginning. A clean slate. That evening, I drove to a hardware store because I needed a screwdriver and a few picture hooks. Nothing dramatic. Just an ordinary errand. I was standing in an aisle trying to reach a box on a high shelf when a man about my age noticed me struggling. Here. He reached up, grabbed the box, and handed it to me. Thank you, I said. He smiled. Then he walked away. That was the entire interaction. Maybe 20 seconds. 3 hours later, I heard pounding on the glass doors of my apartment building. I looked through the lobby. Colton. My stomach dropped. He was standing outside, slamming his fist against the glass while neighbors gathered behind me. Open the door. I didn't move. He saw me. His expression changed. I saw you at the store, he shouted. The entire lobby went silent. I saw that guy handing you things, smiling at you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He pointed at me through the glass. You think you get to just start over? You think I'm going to let some stranger think he has a shot with you? I called the police. By the time they arrived, Colton had transformed. His shoulders relaxed. His voice became calm. He told them we'd just broken up. He said emotions were high. He apologized. He called the whole thing a misunderstanding. The officers spoke to both of us and eventually told us to go home and cool off. Colton left. But that night, lying in my new apartment, I realized something terrifying. He hadn't come there because he wanted me back. He had come there because he wanted me to know he was watching. The second incident happened at a bookstore. A guy working the register recommended a novel while he rang up my purchase. That was it. A book recommendation. The next morning, I got a message from a friend who worked nearby. The clerk's car had been vandalized in the employee parking lot. A long scratch ran down the side. I knew immediately. Colton had found another person to punish for speaking to me. Then came the laundromat. A man asked if he could use the dryer beside mine. Colton followed him outside. The man came back several minutes later looking shaken. He told the attendant that a stranger had confronted him and warned him to stay away from me. Security footage confirmed it. Colton was banned from the property. But none of it stopped him. For nearly 2 years, this became my life. I stopped smiling at men, stopped making casual conversation, stopped accepting help. If someone held a door open for me, I'd barely acknowledge them. If a cashier joked with me, I'd look down. I started checking parking lots before getting into my car. I watched reflections in windows. I changed routes home. I stopped dating completely. I even became afraid of being friendly. Because every time I forgot to be careful, someone else paid the price. Colton was smart about it. He rarely did anything directly to me. There was always distance, always an excuse, always some explanation that made everything look like coincidence. I filed for a protective order. My sister begged me to move to another state. My mother wanted me to come home to Michigan. But I had built a life in Nashville. I was a pediatric nurse. I had my apartment, my job, my routines, my friends. Why should I be the one who disappeared? So I stayed. But I became a ghost. At 26 years old, I lived like someone had locked me inside an invisible cage. Then, one Thursday evening, everything changed. I just finished a brutal 12-hour shift. I was exhausted. My feet hurt. My brain felt like static. I walked into the hospital parking garage, got into my car, turned the key. Nothing. Not even a click. I tried again. Nothing. I dropped my forehead against the steering wheel. I was so tired I could have cried. Then a tow truck rolled through the garage. The driver was dropping off another vehicle. He slowed when he saw me sitting there. The window came down. "You need help." I looked up. And up. And up. The man who climbed out of that truck was enormous. I'm 5'3". He had to be at least 6'5". Broad shoulders. Huge hands. A slightly crooked nose. A small scar across his lower lip. He looked like the last person I'd want to meet alone in a dark parking garage. Then he smiled. And his voice was soft. "Hey. It's all right." He walked toward my car. "Pop the hood. Let me take a look." His name was Rhodes. I explained everything at once. The shift. The dead battery. How exhausted I was. He listened without interrupting. Then he looked under the hood. Battery terminals corroded. He glanced at me. "Give me 10 minutes." He pointed toward the elevators. "There's a vending machine over there. Grab some water. I'll have you out of here." I almost told him no. Almost. Because accepting help from a man wasn't just accepting help anymore. It was potentially putting him on Colton's radar. But I was exhausted. So I nodded. "Thank you." 10 minutes later, my engine started. I tried handing Rhodes $20. He pushed it back. "First one's free." He smiled. "Just replace that battery before it leaves you stranded somewhere worse." I laughed quietly. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd laughed with a stranger. He pulled a card from his pocket. "Roadside and repairs. Anything on wheels dies on you, call me." I took the card. "Seriously," I said. "You saved me tonight." Then I drove away. 2 blocks later, I saw Colton. He was sitting across from a gas station, watching. Our eyes met through his windshield. And he smiled. Not a friendly smile. A warning. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. I took the long way home. I checked my mirrors the entire drive. And I barely slept. The next morning, I couldn't concentrate at work. I kept imagining what would happen to Rhodes. His truck. His shop. His tires. I searched for his business online and kept refreshing the page like I was waiting for terrible news. Nothing. On my lunch break, I drove past his shop. He was outside. Alive. Fine. Laughing with a customer. He noticed me. Raised a hand. I waved back. Then I drove away before he could see how hard my heart was pounding. 3 days passed. Nothing happened. No vandalism. No threats. No Colton. Then Saturday came. I went to a little coffee roaster near the river. A place I used to love. I hadn't been there in over a year. I was reading the menu when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Delaney." I turned. Rhodes. He was wearing a faded t-shirt and gym shorts, holding a paper cup that looked ridiculously small in his hand. "Hey." He smiled. "Best cold brew in the city." He pointed toward the counter. "You have to try it." I hesitated. Then I let him buy me one. Somehow, one coffee became a conversation. The conversation became lunch. And lunch became almost 2 hours of talking. He told me about growing up in Oregon. about moving to Nashville, about rebuilding his life. Then he told me why he trained MMA. I stared at him. You fight. He laughed. Professionally. My stomach tightened. He noticed. I know what you're thinking. I'm not thinking anything. You absolutely are. I smiled despite myself. He took a sip of his coffee. People think fighting is about being angry. He shook his head. It's mostly about control, discipline. Once you understand how much damage you can do, you become very careful about when you use that ability. Something about that stayed with me, because Colton had always used strength to make people smaller. Rhodes talked about strength like it was something you were responsible for controlling. We talked for almost 2 hours. He was funny, thoughtful, gentle. Nothing about him matched the image I had built in my head. When we finally stood up, he asked for my number. Every alarm inside me went off. But for once, I was tired of listening to the alarms. I gave it to him. That night, he texted. He asked if I'd want to have dinner sometime. I stared at the message for 15 minutes. Then I typed, I need to tell you something first. His response came quickly. Okay. So I told him everything. The 5 years. The control. The men who had been punished simply for speaking to me. The stalking. The threats. The reason I hadn't dated anyone in 2 years. I waited for him to disappear. Instead, his answer came back. I'm sorry you've lived through that. Then another message. I'm not scared of your ex. And finally, I'd still really like to take you to dinner. I read those words 3 times. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar. Not safety. Not yet. Something smaller. Hope. And I had no idea that accepting that dinner was about to change the rest of my life. We went to a little barbecue restaurant that Tuesday. There were picnic tables outside, string lights overhead, and enough people around us that I should have felt comfortable. Instead, I scanned every face, every parked car, every entrance, every shadow beyond the fence. Rhodes noticed. He didn't say anything. He just kept talking about his upcoming fight. His opponent was a wrestler. He's good on the ground, Rhodes said. That's my weak spot. What's your strong spot? Hands. He smiled. I came up boxing. For 2 hours, nothing happened. No Colton. No threats. No one approached us. And when Rhodes walked me to my car, he asked if I'd like to see him again. Yes, I said. And I meant it. 2 dinners became 3. Then 4. Rhodes never rushed me. He never demanded explanations. He never asked why I checked the parking lot twice before getting into his truck. He simply waited. He held my hand. He kissed me goodnight. And somehow, little by little, I started breathing normally around him. The strangest part was that Colton didn't show up. Not once. 3 weeks after we started dating, I went to Rhodes' fight. I brought my best friend Nadia. She had known me before Colton. She had watched me slowly disappear during those 2 years. When we found our seats, she looked at me. I can't believe you're dating someone. She paused. Actually, I can't believe you're dating a cage fighter. I laughed. He's not what you think. She looked at me for a second, then smiled. Look at you. What? You're smiling. I looked down. She was right. I haven't seen you like this in years. The fight was intense. I'd never watched MMA before. Every time Rhodes took a hit, my entire body tensed. But he stayed calm, focused, precise. He won in the 2nd round. Afterward, we found him backstage. His cheek was swollen. His hands were wrapped. But the second he saw me, his whole face changed. You came. Of course I came. He kissed me in the hallway. Then he introduced me to everyone. This is Delaney. He paused. My girlfriend. The word hit me harder than I expected. Girlfriend. I hadn't been anyone's girlfriend since Colton. Later, when everyone had gone, Rhodes and I sat inside his truck. He looked serious. I need to tell you something. My chest tightened. Here it comes. I thought. This was the moment he was going to tell me that dating me was too complicated. That Colton was too much. Instead, Rhodes said, your ex came to see me. I stared at him. What? About 2 weeks ago. He explained that Colton had shown up at his shop. He'd waited until Rhodes was alone. Then he'd started making threats, telling him to stay away from me, trying to scare him with stories about what happened to other men. My throat tightened. I'm so sorry. Rhodes reached for my hand. Delaney, let me finish. He told me Colton had tried to intimidate him, but Rhodes hadn't backed down. I told him what I do for a living. He smiled faintly. I told him I've been fighting for 14 years. Then his expression hardened, and I told him something else. I waited. If he ever came near you again, I wouldn't threaten him. Rhodes looked directly at me. I'd keep my promise. I swallowed. What did Colton do? Kept pretending he wasn't nervous for about 10 seconds. Rhodes shook his head. Then he left. And he hadn't come back. I stared at Rhodes. You threatened him. No. He smiled. I explained consequences. Then he became serious. There's a difference. He squeezed my hand. Delaney, you've spent years protecting everyone around you from him. His voice softened. You don't have to protect me. I can handle myself. Then he said something I wasn't prepared for. And I want to be the one taking care of you for a change. That sentence broke something open inside me. Not because I needed rescuing, because I had spent years believing that anyone who got close to me would eventually get hurt. Rhodes had looked at the danger and decided he could handle standing beside me. 4 months later, Colton still hadn't contacted me. Not once. No damaged cars. No threats. No surprise appearances. Nothing. We moved into a little house together. It had a real yard, 2 bedrooms, a quiet street. A retired teacher named Bernadette lived across from us. When she first saw Rhodes, she looked him up and down. Well, she said, aren't you a big one? Rhodes laughed. This street could use a few more decent men. I'll do what I can, ma'am. Moving day was chaotic. Nadia helped. So did 2 of Rhodes' training partners, Emiliano and Bishop. They were both fighters. Neither was as big as Rhodes. But they treated me like family. While carrying a box into the house, Emiliano shook his head. Rhodes will not shut up about you. Rhodes threw a roll of packing tape at him. We get it, man. You're in love. That first night, there was no furniture, no television, no proper dinner. We sat on the living room floor eating takeout from the containers. Rhodes put his arm around me. This is ours. He looked around the empty room. Our house. Our life. Nobody else gets to put a hand on it. I believed him. The next few months were the happiest I'd experienced in years. But healing wasn't magical. It wasn't waking up one morning and suddenly becoming the old me. There were still moments when my body remembered fear before my brain could tell it there was nothing to fear. About 3 months into our relationship, Rhodes stayed late at the gym. He forgot to call. His phone went unanswered, and my mind immediately went somewhere dark. By the time he walked through the door, I was furious. I snapped at him. He didn't snap back. He just stood there. Then he said, "You're right." I froze. I should have called. "I'm sorry." That's it. No yelling. No punishment. No silent treatment. No making me beg to be forgiven. Just an apology. I started crying. He looked confused. "What's wrong?" I wiped my face. I didn't know arguments could be this small. That night, I told him everything. How Colton could turn a tiny disagreement into days of emotional punishment. How I was always trying to guess what I'd done wrong. How I learned to apologize before I even knew what I was apologizing for. Rhodes held me. "I'm never going to do that to you." He kissed my forehead. "We'll fight sometimes. That's normal. But we're going to fight fair. And we're always going to find our way back to each other." I wanted to believe him. I did. But healing still had its setbacks. 5 months into our relationship, I had a panic attack at dinner. We were out with people from Rhodes' gym. Someone brought a new girlfriend. Her name was Priya. She was around my age. Dark hair. Similar build. She started talking about a controlling ex-boyfriend. I don't even know what exactly triggered it. Maybe the story. Maybe the crowded restaurant. Maybe the noise. Maybe the number of people behind me that I couldn't see. 1 second I was sitting at the table. The next, my throat felt closed. My heart started pounding. The room seemed too loud. Too bright. Too full. I excused myself. Locked myself in a bathroom stall. I tried to breathe. It wasn't working. My hands were shaking. My thoughts were racing. For a moment, I was convinced Colton was somewhere outside. Waiting. Nadia found me. She sat down on the bathroom floor beside me. "You're safe." I couldn't answer. "Delaney, look at me." I looked at her. "Colton isn't here." She kept repeating it. "Rhodes is outside. You're safe." Eventually, Rhodes came looking. He took one look at me and understood. He didn't demand an explanation. He didn't make me feel embarrassed. He simply helped me up and told everyone we needed to leave. On the drive home, I apologized. "I ruined dinner." "No." His answer was immediate. "You had a panic attack. That's not something you did wrong." I stared out the window. "I thought I was getting better." "You are. But getting better isn't a straight line." He reached over and took my hand. "Some days are going to be hard." "That's allowed." He encouraged me to return to therapy. My new counselor specialized in trauma recovery. She didn't force me to relive everything. She taught me how to understand what had happened without letting it control every moment that came afterward. One day, she told me something that stayed with me. "You can't control what another person chooses to do. You can control your response." And your response was to survive. Slowly, I started becoming myself again. The girl who laughed easily. The girl who could trust people. The girl who didn't flinch every time a voice became loud. Then, last week, something happened that I never expected. I saw Colton. I was in the grocery store. I was standing in the produce section when I looked up. There he was. Across the oranges. My entire body locked. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Colton looked away. He turned his cart around and walked in the opposite direction. No threat. No confrontation. Nothing. I stood there. And then I laughed. Actually laughed. Because for the first time, I realized something. He wasn't frightening me anymore. He was afraid of what would happen if he came near me. Not because Rhodes controlled me, not because Rhodes told me who I could speak to, but because Colton knew I wasn't alone anymore. That night, I told Rhodes what happened. He smiled. Good. I looked at him. I feel strange about it. Why? It almost feels like you scared him away. Rhodes thought about that. There's a difference. He took my hand. I'm not controlling you. I'm not telling you where you can go or who you can talk to. I'm just making sure he can't shrink your world anymore. I sat quietly, because he was right. Then, a few days later, I received a message from a woman I'd never met. Her name was Sice. She said she lived in Nashville. She told me she had started dating Colton, and she thought something was wrong. My blood went cold, because I knew exactly what that meant. Colton hadn't changed. He had simply found another woman. I showed Rhodes the message. What do I do? He didn't hesitate. You meet her. Tell her everything. Give her the warning nobody gave you. The next afternoon, I sat across from Sice in a coffee shop. She looked young, nervous, like she was already questioning herself. I didn't soften the truth. I told her about the control, the isolation, the surveillance, the threats, the way Colton turned innocent interactions into reasons to punish people. She became paler with every sentence. Then she whispered, "He told me you were unstable." I almost laughed. That's exactly what he does. She looked down at her phone. He's already going through mine. She swallowed. He says it's because of trust issues from his last relationship. I looked at her. You're not helping him heal. You're feeding the behavior. And it will get worse. 2 days later, she texted me. I broke it off. Then, he lost it. He screamed. But I got out. I showed Rhodes the message. He looked at me. You saved her. I shook my head. We broke the cycle. But 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Sice. Her voice was trembling. Delaney. He's outside my building. My heart stopped. He's been sitting in his car for over an hour. He's just staring at my window. I stood up. Where are you? She gave me the address. I grabbed my keys. Rhodes stopped me before I reached the door. Where are you going? Sice's place. Colton is there. He looked at me. Then I'm coming with you. And together, we drove straight into the next chapter of the fight. Colton's car was exactly where Sice said it would be. Parked across from her building. Engine off. He was sitting behind the wheel, staring toward one of the illuminated windows. Rhodes pulled in behind him. He got out. I watched through the windshield. He walked to Colton's driver's side window and knocked. Colton looked up. Even from a distance, I could see the change in his expression. Anger. Then recognition. Then fear. A few minutes later, Colton started his car. He drove away. Rhodes returned. He's gone. What did you say? I reminded him of our last conversation. He paused. Then I told him that if he ever harassed you, me, or anyone in your life again, I'd make sure people knew exactly what kind of person he was. Rhodes had researched him. He knew where Colton worked. He knew his company had professional conduct policies. He hadn't threatened him physically. He had simply made it clear that intimidation worked both ways. We went upstairs and stayed with Sice for an hour. Before we left, I gave her my therapist's number. Therapy helped me. You don't have to figure all of this out alone. That weekend, Rhodes and I went back to the coffee shop by the river. The same window table where we'd first really talked. He sat across from me. I have something to tell you. I waited. I'm fighting for the regional belt next month. The biggest fight of my life. I'll be there. I know. He took my hand. But that's not what I wanted to say. He looked down at our hands. Before I met you, fighting was everything. It was who I was. Now, he smiled. It still matters. But it's not everything anymore. He looked at me. You're everything. My heart started pounding. I'm not proposing. He laughed. Not yet. Then his expression became serious. Meeting you changed my life. You reminded me that strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about who you protect, who you stand up for, who you choose. I kissed him, right there in the coffee shop. And for once, I didn't care who saw. The championship fight was 3 weeks later. His opponent had an intimidating record. The coaches were nervous. Rhodes wasn't. I'm ready. The fight lasted 5 rounds. It was exhausting to watch. Every time Rhodes took a hard hit, my stomach twisted. Every time he recovered, I screamed louder. In the final round, he landed a clean combination. His opponent went down. The referee stopped the fight. The arena erupted. Rhodes had won. They wrapped the belt around his waist. I cried. Not because someone had finally defeated Colton. Because I was watching the man I loved accomplish something he'd worked toward for years. Afterward, in the locker room, Rhodes looked exhausted. His face was swollen. His hands were still wrapped. But he was smiling. We did it. You did it, I corrected. He shook his head. No. You think I could have trained for this while worrying every night about what was happening to you? He looked at me. You freed me too. That's when I realized something. We hadn't saved each other in the way people usually mean it. He hadn't rescued me from my life, and I hadn't fixed his. We had simply given each other room to become ourselves again. A few weeks later, Rhodes received an offer from a bigger promotion. More money, more exposure, bigger fights, more travel. He looked at me. What do you think? Take it. He blinked. Really? Absolutely. This is your dream. I'm not going to be the thing that holds you back. He pulled me close. You could never hold me back. Then he smiled. Come with me. So I switched to travel nursing. I went with him. Memphis, Louisville, Las Vegas. Some fights he won. Some he lost. His first major loss was difficult. He'd fought well. The other fighter was simply better that night. Back at the hotel, Rhodes sat on the edge of the bed staring at the floor. You fought well. Not well enough. You can't win every fight. I know. He looked at me. I wanted to win that one for you. I sat beside him. Rhodes, I don't need you to win fights for me. I took his hand. I need you to be safe. I need you healthy. I need you to come home. That's all I care about. He looked at me. How did I get this lucky? We both got lucky. 6 months into his new contract, we were in Denver. The night before another fight. Rhodes was supposed to be sleeping. Instead, he was sitting on the edge of the bed. Anxious. What's wrong? Nothing. He stood, reached into his gym bag, and pulled out a small box. My heart stopped. Delaney. He looked nervous. I know I told you I wasn't proposing at the coffee shop. He laughed. That was months ago. I've carried this thing to every fight. waiting for the perfect moment. He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. There isn't a perfect moment. There's just us. He took a breath. I don't want to wait anymore. Will you marry me? I couldn't speak. I just nodded, held out my hand. He slid the ring onto my finger. We both started crying. The next night, he won his fight, and afterward, he called me his fiancée. We started planning the wedding. Something small. Around 40 people. Close friends and family. Nadia would be my maid of honor. Rhodes' brothers would fly in from Oregon. The wedding would be at the courtyard behind his gym. String lights. A view of the ridge line. The place where so much of our new life had been built. Then another message arrived. This one from a private investigator. He said he had been hired by Colton's current girlfriend. She had already noticed warning signs. She wanted out before things escalated. The investigator asked whether I'd be willing to give a statement. I said yes. So did Sice. Then something happened that changed everything. The investigator called again. We found 6 other women. Same pattern. Same control. Same behavior. Different years. Different victims. He asked if I'd testify. I looked across our kitchen. Rhodes was making dinner. Completely ordinary. Completely at peace. Our home. Our life. Yes. I would testify. A few weeks later, Colton was served with a protective order. The authorities were also reviewing allegations involving stalking and harassment. Sice called me crying. It's really over. I closed my eyes. 4 years, I dreamed about hearing those words. But when they finally came, they didn't feel like revenge. They felt like relief. That night, Rhodes and I celebrated on the couch. No fancy dinner. No party. Just a movie. Being ordinary. You did it, Rhodes said. We did it. I shook my head. All of us. Every woman who came forward. He smiled. You know the best part? I looked at him. He has to live knowing he lost. Not to me. Not to some bigger man. To all of you. You took your power back. The wedding planning continued. Rhodes' mother flew in early. She hugged me the first time she saw me. Thank you for loving my boy. Then she told me about Rhodes' father. He had died when Rhodes was 16. A heart attack. Rhodes rarely talked about it. That night, I asked him. He was quiet for a moment. My dad always told me something. What? A big man has one job. To stand between the people who can't defend themselves and the people who would hurt them. He looked at me. Fighting gave my anger somewhere to go after he died. Then he smiled. And standing beside you? That feels like keeping a promise to him. We both cried. 2 people who had each been hurt in completely different ways, somehow finding something whole together. Then, one afternoon, I returned to the hardware store. The same one where all of this had started. I needed picture hooks. I stood in the aisle. A man around my age reached up and grabbed a box for me. He handed it over. Here. Thank you. He smiled. I smiled back. And nothing happened. No threat. No fear. No Colton. Just 2 strangers having an ordinary interaction. I walked outside. Sat in my car. And breathed. Really breathed. 4 years, I'd lived as though someone had their hand permanently on an emergency brake inside my head. That day, I realized it was gone. I drove home. To the house I shared with Rhodes. The house where I could laugh. Invite friends over. Talk to whoever I wanted. Walk down a street without checking every corner. Live. Actually live. The wedding was only days away. My dress was ready. The cake was ordered. The flowers were done. Nadia had helped me choose a simple ivory gown. When I tried it on, she stared at me. "You're glowing. I've never seen you like this." She was right. I was happy. Not because my life had become perfect. Because it was mine. Rhodes hadn't turned me into someone new. He had simply helped me believe I was allowed to become myself again. The rehearsal dinner was held at the coffee shop by the river. The same table where we'd first talked. The owner remembered us. "I knew there was something about you two." Rhodes laughed. "First date energy?" "Exactly." The next night was his final fight before the wedding. He won by decision. It wasn't his prettiest victory, but he won. Afterward, he announced that he was taking a month off. No training camp. No fights. Just me and my wife. My wife. I smiled every time he said it. We were going to honeymoon in Oregon. He wanted to show me where he grew up. Introduce me to old friends. Visit his father's grave. Close one chapter. Open another. That night, lying in bed, Rhodes turned toward me. "I want you to know something." "What?" "Whatever happens. Whatever fights I win or lose. You're the best thing that ever came into my life." I smiled. "You saved me every bit as much as I saved you." I looked at him. "How did I save you?" He thought about it. "I was angry for years after my dad died. Fighting helped. But it didn't make the anger disappear. I was just aiming it somewhere. Then he took my hand. Then you came along. Suddenly I had something to fight for that wasn't anger. I had someone to protect. And that changed everything." We fell asleep holding hands. Tomorrow was the rehearsal. Then the wedding. Then the rest of our lives. And I need to say something I never want to forget. I'm not grateful for what Colton did to me. I don't believe abuse happens for a reason. I don't believe it secretly makes you stronger. It doesn't. It breaks you. Then you spend a long, exhausting time putting yourself back together. What I'm grateful for is what came afterward. I'm grateful for Rhodes. For his strength. His patience. His gentleness. For the way he stood beside me without taking control of my life. For the way he reminded me that being strong isn't about making another person smaller. It's about making room for them to breathe. I'm grateful for Nadia. For the women who came forward. For the people who believed me. And most of all, I'm grateful for myself. For staying. For surviving. For getting into that car that night. For accepting help. For choosing to live instead of merely hiding. Colton doesn't get any more of my story. He's a closed chapter. Finished. This is a new book. And it's a good one. Because the woman in this story doesn't need rescuing. She's glad someone strong chose to stand beside her anyway. She's learned that love doesn't cage you. It opens the door. She's learned that strength doesn't have to be frightening. Sometimes strength is gentle. Sometimes it looks like a giant MMA fighter sitting on the kitchen floor assembling furniture badly. Sometimes it looks like a best friend sitting beside you on a bathroom floor repeating, "You're safe." Sometimes it looks like 6 women deciding they're done being silent. And sometimes it looks like a woman standing in a hardware store, smiling at a stranger, and realizing nothing terrible is going to happen. The wedding is in 6 days. My dress is ready. Rhodes has his suit. The flowers are done. The cake is ordered. Everything is ready. And for the first time in years, I'm not looking over my shoulder. I'm not planning an escape. I'm not waiting for something terrible to happen. I'm just excited, nervous, happy, completely, impossibly happy. Because Colton took 5 years from me. He took my confidence, my freedom, my ability to trust ordinary moments. But he doesn't get my future. He doesn't get my happiness. He doesn't get my life. I took those back. We took them back. And now I'm walking toward a future that finally belongs to me. Not because someone rescued me. Because I finally stopped letting fear decide where I was allowed to go. Rhodes once told me that strength is about who you choose, who you protect, who you stand beside. And every day we choose each other. That's what freedom feels like. Not never being afraid again. It's realizing fear doesn't get to make your decisions anymore. It's walking into the sunlight without checking over your shoulder. It's smiling at a stranger. It's coming home. It's choosing love without surrendering yourself. And next week, when I walk down that aisle toward the man who saw me at my lowest and never once treated me like I was broken, I won't be thinking about Colton. I won't be thinking about the years I lost. I won't be thinking about what could have happened. I'll be thinking about what comes next. My husband. Our home. Our future. Our life. Finally mine. And this time, I'm not surviving. I'm living.